Dooku remained in his quarters at the Jedi Temple, immersed in deep meditation. The Force, which had always been clear to him, now became a whirlwind of omens. The images that emerged were disconnected, but filled with shadows. He saw the temple in flames, masters falling before red sabers, and, at the center of it all, a young man with a tormented gaze, capable of changing the destiny of the galaxy. The master breathed deeply and rose, with the conviction that this could not be ignored. The visions repeated night after night. Dooku could not distinguish whether they came as a warning or as an inevitable future. Always, however, the figure of a slave boy appeared. His small hands held a lightsaber that did not yet exist, and each blow he struck dragged the Order closer to destruction. "Who is this boy?" he asked himself in silence, without obtaining a clear answer from the Force. The fear of what he saw began to corrode his confidence in the Order. He sought answers from his master. Yoda only told him, "Difficult to see, the future is. Always in change, it is." Dooku, however, felt a growing urgency. He was not an inexperienced Padawan to confuse omens with illusions. The intensity of the visions only increased, as if the Force cried out for immediate action. To ignore them would be a betrayal of balance itself. When he felt that Qui-Gon Jinn was in a very strong vortex coming from Tatooine, Dooku felt the immediate connection. That desert planet was the same one that appeared in his visions, arid and oppressive, and in it was the key to everything. There was no doubt. The boy was there. The master's heart tightened. If Qui-Gon found him and decided to take him to the Order, perhaps it would be exactly the step that would lead to the darkness he had witnessed. Moved by urgency, Dooku left Coruscant in secret. He did not inform the Council, fearing the same disbelief he had already heard before. His ship crossed hyperspace toward the small outer rim planet. During the journey, the visions returned, even clearer. The boy grew before his eyes, becoming an invincible warrior, but each of his victories was stained with pain, each conquest accompanied by the fall of allies. Upon landing on Tatooine, Dooku walked silently through the dusty streets of Mos Espa. The vision he had had was no longer just an omen. He could feel the presence of the Force vibrating around someone very close. He passed merchants, slaves, and hunters, but the intensity of the energy grew until it almost suffocated him. It was then that he spotted Qui-Gon Jinn in the distance, accompanied by a blond boy with lively, curious eyes. The impact was immediate. That was the boy. Dooku approached, keeping to the shadows to observe. Every gesture of the boy radiated confidence and purity, but also a burning flame that could easily transform into fire. Qui-Gon spoke with the boy, already demonstrating that he had perceived his potential. The scene made Dooku feel a tightness in his chest. His vision was confirmed. There was no longer any doubt that this was the chosen one, but perhaps chosen for destruction. While observing, Dooku reflected on his former apprentice. Qui-Gon had always been moved by his heart, more open to the will of the Force than to the rigid rules of the Order. This made him special but also dangerous. If Qui-Gon decided to take the boy, there would be nothing that would make him change his mind. "Qui-Gon will not easily listen to my warnings," murmured Dooku, feeling that confrontation was inevitable. At night, secluded in a simple inn, Dooku was again tormented by visions. He saw the temple in ruins again, but this time he could distinguish even more. The grown boy, wrapped in black, leading armies of clones under Imperial banners. His red blade cut down masters who had once been brothers. The boy's face was consumed by fury and pain. "If he is taken to Coruscant, the fall of the Order will be certain," concluded the master, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. The next morning, he decided to hide no longer. He found Qui-Gon in a workshop in Mos Espa and approached. Young Anakin looked at him curiously, but it was the surprise in Qui-Gon's eyes that broke the silence. "Master," he said, incredulous. "What are you doing here on Tatooine?" Dooku breathed deeply, knowing that this moment could define the future. "I came because I saw what you have not yet seen. This boy must not go to Coruscant." Qui-Gon frowned, approaching the boy as one who protects instinctively. What are you talking about? He is sensitive to the Force like no other I have ever seen. He is the chosen one. Dooku shook his head gravely. He is the chosen one, yes, but to bring destruction. The Order is not prepared for what he will become. If you take him to Coruscant, you will initiate the ruin that I have already seen with my own eyes. Anakin, confused, looked from one to the other, not understanding the weight of the words. What is happening? Why do you speak as if I were dangerous? Qui-Gon placed his hand on his shoulder, trying to calm him. No one here will harm you, Anakin. Dooku, however, maintained firmness in his gaze. Qui-Gon, I implore you, do not take him. Keep him away from the Order. Protect him from a destiny that will destroy everything we love. The silence that followed was charged with tension, as if the Force awaited the choice of each one. Dooku maintained firmness in his gaze when he again addressed Qui-Gon. This planet may seem inhospitable, but it is here that the boy must remain. The Force has shown me that far from Coruscant he will be protected, hidden from a destiny that would lead him to perdition. Qui-Gon hesitated, observing Anakin playing with droid scrap in the corner of the workshop. The master knew that Dooku did not speak in vain. Still, it was difficult to accept that the boy should remain in slavery. Dooku, as a count and one of the richest men in the galaxy, then stepped forward. I myself will pay for him and his mother. They will be free, living with dignity here, where nothing will find them. Qui-Gon remained silent for a few moments, absorbing the words of his former master. If you truly believe this is the will of the Force, then I cannot oppose it. But know that my mission here has not ended. I need to take Senator Amidala to Coruscant. Dooku raised his hand, as one who cuts the argument. No, leave that to me. I will go with Obi-Wan, escort the senator and complete the mission. You must remain. Your duty is greater now. Train this boy and shape his future away from the eyes of the Council. Anakin observed the conversation without understanding all the weight of the decision, but he perceived that his destiny was at stake. Will I be able to stay with my mother? He asked with wide eyes. Qui-Gon crouched down, looking at him tenderly. Yes, Anakin, you will stay with her, and I will be here to guide you. The smile on the boy's face was immediate, as if he had received the gift he most desired. For Dooku, this only reinforced the certainty that he was on the right path. Attachment would be inevitable, but perhaps it was exactly this that would prevent the dark destiny of the visions. Dooku and Obi-Wan departed the next day with the senator. Inside the ship, Obi-Wan could not hide his perplexity. Master Dooku, with all respect, what is happening? Why did Qui-Gon stay behind? I have never seen him abandon a mission. Dooku responded calmly, but without revealing all the details. There are paths that the Force traces that not even the Council understands. Trust that he is where he needs to be. We will take care of bringing the senator safely. Obi-Wan fell silent, but doubt remained in his thoughts. Upon arriving at Coruscant, Dooku took the lead before the Council. His voice echoed through the hall. Qui-Gon Jinn will not return. He renounces the Council and the Order to fulfill a greater duty. I myself gave him this charge. Silence took hold of the chamber. Yoda narrowed his eyes and responded, Renounce he should not. Explain himself he needs to. But Dooku did not retreat. He owes me obedience as master, and I freed him to follow the will of the Force. This decision does not belong to any of you. The words fell heavily, revealing a schism that would only increase with time. Meanwhile, fate brought another twist. Darth Maul, sent by his master to intercept the Queen, crossed paths with Dooku and Obi-Wan. The clash was inevitable. Maul wielded his double saber with fury, but Dooku was an experienced and very powerful master. His refined techniques and mastery over the Force surpassed the Sith's agility. Obi-Wan fought alongside him, but it was the Count who delivered the decisive blow, cutting Maul's weapon in half and bringing him down to the ground. This was only the herald of a greater shadow, said Dooku, observing the motionless body of the enemy. Victory brought momentary relief but also questions. Obi-Wan looked at Dooku with admiration, but also with a spark of doubt. If a Sith has returned, the Council needs to know. Dooku nodded, but maintained control of the narrative. They will know, but we must filter how it will be told. There are truths that can destabilize the Order, and it is not time to cast them all at once. Obi-Wan did not contest, but in his innermost self, he felt that the Masters were moving away from the path of transparency. Meanwhile, in Tatooine, Anakin's life was changing. Dooku had paid Watto a generous sum, guaranteeing freedom for the boy and his mother. They would no longer be slaves. Besides, he had given Qui-Gon sufficient resources so that he could concentrate on the boy's training without other distractions. For the first time, Anakin felt the weight of chains disappear. His house was humble, but now it was a free home, where the future seemed possible. Qui-Gon began teachings about the living force, that which manifested in every being, in every present moment. The boy demonstrated fascination and learned quickly, but his questioning mind led him to ask questions that few Padawans would dare. If the Force is in everything, Master, why don't the Jedi listen to others as much as they listen to themselves? Qui-Gon smiled, understanding the restlessness. Because they forgot how to listen, Anakin. But you must not forget. Your path will be different. Training in Tatooine was simple, far from the libraries and cold walls of the Jedi Temple. Qui-Gon showed the boy how to feel the sand beneath his feet, how to hear the breath of the desert wind, and how to distinguish life in small details. The Force is here, Anakin, not in rules, not in dogmas, but in every breath of the galaxy. The boy absorbed every word, feeling that his journey would not be like that of other Jedi he had only heard about in stories. Anakin's temperament, however, let something beyond curiosity show through. There was in him a flame that ignited too quickly, an intensity that could consume if not guided. Qui-Gon recognized this trait and did not repress it, but redirected it. Do not fight against your passion, Anakin. Learn to transform it into compassion. That is the secret the Order forgot. The boy listened attentively, absorbing the wisdom that only a master like Qui-Gon could offer. Far from Coruscant, the boy did not know the rigid restrictions of the Jedi Order. For him, the Force was not a prison of rules, but an open field of discoveries. Beside his mother, he felt complete, and beside Qui-Gon, he learned that he could be more than just a warrior. Balance seemed closer than it had ever been, but the shadows that Dooku feared still lurked, silent, waiting for the moment to resurface. Anakin's training in Tatooine continued in a unique way, distant from the walls of the Jedi Temple and close to his mother's warmth. This coexistence gave him something that few Padawans experienced: emotional stability. Shmi, always present, was a foundation of love and security, while Qui-Gon taught him discipline and sensitivity to the living force. This combination created in Anakin a much more balanced foundation than that foreseen by the rigid codes of Coruscant. Dooku, from time to time, appeared to accompany the progress, offering both support and warnings. Dooku did not limit himself to observing. He also shared ancient stories about the Jedi Order, memories of past eras, of masters who dared to challenge conventions in the name of truth. Anakin listened fascinated, absorbing every detail as if it were part of a lost tradition. The Jedi were once explorers, seekers of wisdom, not just warriors of the Council, said Dooku, while Anakin imagined himself treading paths different from the traditional ones. This contact with free ideas shaped in him a questioning and bold spirit. Qui-Gon perceived how much Dooku's influence intertwined with his own teaching method. The two, in essence, formed a lineage of masters who did not blindly accept dogma. Anakin fit into this legacy naturally. Master, why do the Jedi need to follow so many rules, if the Force speaks to us in every moment? He questioned. Qui-Gon answered with serenity. Rules are attempts to hear the Force, but those who do not listen to the heart end up hearing only echoes. These conversations strengthened the boy's inner freedom. With time, Anakin demonstrated increasingly impressive aptitudes. His connection with the Force was almost instinctive, allowing feats that many knights took years to master. He moved heavy objects without effort, perceived intentions before they were even spoken, and, in training battles, reacted with superhuman reflexes. Qui-Gon, surprised, commented to Dooku, "He learns in months what others would need decades, but the flame is intense and needs to be guided." Dooku, always pragmatic, responded, "The flame can illuminate or destroy. It is up to us not to extinguish it, but to mold it." Shmi's constant presence ensured that Anakin never felt alone. This brought to the young man an emotional confidence that distanced him from the fears and anxieties that might one day dominate him. Contrary to what Dooku feared in his visions, the boy did not grow corroded by the fear of losing those he loved. On the contrary, the proximity to his mother and Qui-Gon's guidance made him someone grateful and firm, capable of facing life with courage. This essential difference silently changed the course of the destiny that seemed traced. Even so, Dooku did not stop worrying. On some nights, he revealed to Anakin fragments of his visions. "There are futures that show destruction, and you are always at the center. It is not a condemnation, but a warning." Anakin, still young, asked, "And if I can choose another path?" Dooku smiled slightly. "Then prove that you are capable of defying even the Force when it seems to demand darkness. That is what differentiates the truly great." These words would echo in Anakin for many years. As he aged, Anakin was no longer the curious boy from the workshop in Mos Espa. He had become a confident young man, quick with the saber and even faster in thoughts. His boldness grew, but came accompanied by a compassion that few could equal. When he helped oppressed colonists or saved children in danger, he showed himself as a natural protector. Qui-Gon knew that he was not just an apprentice. He was the incarnation of a promise that the Order would never understand. Dooku, when visiting Tatooine once more, commented with Qui-Gon about the changes in the Jedi Council. "They know of your training and begin to question your absence. It will not be long before they demand answers. And if they discover how much the boy has evolved, they will try to drag him to Coruscant." Qui-Gon raised his gaze to the horizon of the desert. "They will not understand him. For them, attachment to his mother will be seen as weakness. But I say, it is the source of his strength." Dooku agreed but warned, "And it is also what could attract him to the shadows, if he does not know how to master it." The internal conflict was approaching, but Anakin remained oblivious to these disputes. He trained hard, disarmed smugglers who threatened villages and helped travelers lost in the sands of Tatooine. In the eyes of the local people, he was a hero in formation, even though he did not wear official Jedi robes. This freedom allowed him to learn without fear of punishments or reproaches. For him, the Force was alive, present in every act of kindness and in every moment of courage. As he reached adult youth, his connection with the Force grew to impressive levels. He could sense dangers in neighboring systems, even without ever having traveled there. He could move in combat as if guided by instincts beyond human. Qui-Gon and Dooku recognized that they were before someone who surpassed any limit already seen. "He is the chosen one, of that I have no doubt," affirmed Qui-Gon once. Dooku only responded, "And that is exactly why I fear what may come." And it was then that, at a distant point in the galaxy, someone perceived this ascension. In Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine interrupted his own dark meditation upon feeling an overwhelming presence. It was as if the Force had awakened in flames at a remote point in the Outer Rim. A smile appeared on his lips. "So, finally, he flourishes," he murmured. For the Sith, that energy was like an irresistible call. The boy that Dooku had tried to hide now shone so intensely that he could no longer be ignored. Palpatine, over the years, tried several times to probe Dooku, looking for gaps to attract him to his influence. But the visions that the Count had had of Anakin's future never left his mind, creating in him a firm barrier against the seduction of the dark side. Dooku not only distrusted the Chancellor's intentions but also cultivated constant vigilance over his movements. For the Sith, however, the real target was no longer the Count, but the vortex of power that Anakin had become. The young man's presence shone so brightly in the Force that it was impossible for Sidious to ignore. Knowing that he could not conquer Dooku through temptation, Palpatine changed strategy. He began to involve him in important missions, always praising his independence and his critical stance regarding the Jedi Council. "It is rare to find masters with such clarity of thought, Count," said the Chancellor with his calculated smile. At the same time, he asked that Qui-Gon and Anakin participate in tasks in the name of the Republic, creating situations where he could closely observe the relationship between master and apprentice. Every word of Palpatine seemed innocent, but carried hidden intentions. Dooku was suspicious, but had no way to refuse missions that helped maintain the stability of the Republic. "If we do not accept, he will find others," he commented to Qui-Gon during one of the trips. His former apprentice agreed, but warned, "We must watch not only external enemies, but also allies who approach too closely." Anakin, still a young adult, perceived the tension between them, but did not fully understand the political intrigues that surrounded Coruscant. It was during one of these trips to the capital that Anakin saw Padme again, no longer the young queen, but a respected senator. The reunion was immediate in feelings. The boy who had grown up in the desert was now a confident man, and the senator saw in him not only the hero who had helped her people, but also someone who carried genuine kindness in every gesture. The look they exchanged in the Senate did not go unnoticed by Palpatine, who in silence perceived a new opportunity. Romance flourished quickly. Anakin, accustomed to living without the severe restrictions of the Council, saw no reason to hide his feelings. Qui-Gon, different from most Jedi Masters, not only understood but also supported the relationship. Attachment can bring fear, but it can also generate courage. "Everything depends on how you use love," he said to Anakin, always reminding him to balance passion with wisdom. For Dooku, it was proof that the boy was treading a path truly different from the Order. It did not take long for the marriage to be celebrated in Naboo, in a public ceremony that brought together friends and allies. Shmi, emotional, cried with joy to see her son living a life she had never imagined for him. Qui-Gon was beside the couple, proud to have guided them to that moment. Dooku observed with a mixture of serenity and concern, aware that happiness could also become a vulnerability. And, to everyone's surprise, Palpatine attended, smiling, offering vows of prosperity. "True love is the most powerful force in the galaxy," he said, hiding behind the words his real plan. The Chancellor's presence in Naboo was not mere diplomatic gesture. For him, that marriage represented the opening of a door. Anakin now had a bond that could be exploited, a new weakness. Padme had become, in his eyes, the breaking point, the key to manipulating the chosen one's heart. During the banquet, while everyone celebrated, Palpatine attentively observed every gesture of Anakin toward his wife, every protective look, every emotional smile. There was the spark that could become the flame of his domination. Qui-Gon perceived this interest clearly and approached Dooku to comment in a low voice. "He does not take his eyes off the couple. He is like a predator lying in wait." Dooku nodded, serious. "Yes, and if we are not careful, Anakin will be attracted to a game from which he cannot escape." Both knew that vigilance should be doubled, but they also understood that it was impossible to separate Anakin from Padme. The Force had united their destinies in an unbreakable way. Palpatine, maintaining his facade of benevolent statesman, began to include Padme in his conversations. "You are an example of courage for the entire Republic," he said, planting seeds of trust. In the eyes of many, his words sounded only like political compliments, but for Anakin they were encouragements that fed even more his pride. Qui-Gon and Dooku, though attentive, had difficulty preventing the Sith's subtle advance. After all, how to censure a chancellor who showed himself only cordial? Gradually, missions continued to bring everyone's paths closer. Anakin, now as a recognized hero, was called to protect senators in troubled systems. Padme, always involved in diplomacy, traveled alongside him. And in every crisis, Palpatine was present, offering advice, valuing their choices, reinforcing their independence regarding the Jedi Council. "You do not need antiquated rules to be great, young Skywalker," he insinuated with his calm voice. The public marriage of Anakin and Padme also changed the people's perception. Contrary to a shameful secret, the union became a symbol of hope, especially in Naboo, where they were seen as protectors and representatives of a new time. Palpatine's words began as harmless praise, uttered in public speeches in the Senate and in private meetings. Young Skywalker, you are already seen as the greatest hero of the Republic. No Jedi before you has achieved such prestige in so little time. Anakin listened, feeling vanity being fed, but also remembering Qui-Gon's advice, not to let empty words divert him from the living force. Padme, always attentive, perceived the Chancellor's exaggerated interest and exchanged worried looks with Dooku. With each successful mission, the praise intensified. Palpatine made sure to place Anakin as the center of attention, highlighting his independence regarding the Jedi Council. You do not need the chains of the Jedi. Your power is greater than any master's. You have already surpassed what they took centuries to build. To many, it seemed only recognition. But for Anakin, the tone hid something deeper, a veiled invitation to tread a different path. One night, Palpatine called Anakin to his private quarters. The tone was one of confidence. There exists knowledge that the Order never dared to teach. Secrets of the Force that can make you not just the greatest Jedi, but the greatest being in the galaxy. I can guide you if you so desire. Anakin frowned, feeling a strange weight in the words. Why would they hide something like this? He questioned. Palpatine smiled softly. Because they fear what they do not understand. But you are different, you are the chosen one. It was at that instant that the truth struck him. The Force whispered in his innermost self, revealing the shadow that hid behind the Chancellor's mask. The same whirlwind of darkness that Dooku had foreseen now manifested before him. You are the Sith, said Anakin, with his voice loaded with surprise and revulsion. Palpatine let escape a grave laugh. Very well, my young one, faster than I expected. But it will be too late to stop him. The confrontation exploded. Scarlet energy rays came from Palpatine's hands, illuminating the room in deadly flashes. Anakin raised his saber and defended himself, but the intensity of the attack pushed him backward. The Sith's dark power seemed to have no end. Each discharge made him yield a step, until his knees almost touched the ground. The Chancellor's laughter filled the air like thunder, impregnated with arrogance and certainty of victory. Anakin felt the pressure increase, the rays burning his arms and piercing his guard. Palpatine advanced with words that cut deeper than the pain itself. You are strong, Skywalker, but your heart is fragile. Love, compassion, all of this will be your downfall. The Chosen One's destiny is to serve the darkness. The young Jedi closed his eyes for an instant, struggling against the physical and spiritual weight that crushed him. And it was at that instant of near defeat that memory returned with force. Qui-Gon Jinn teaching him to listen to the living force, Shmi smiling in Tatooine, the desert sand between his fingers, the sensation of freedom that he had sworn never to lose. Anakin opened his eyes, and there was no more fear, only clarity. He would not succumb. He would not be a slave to darkness. With a shout, he lowered his saber and raised both hands, not to defend himself, but to welcome the energy that struck him. The Force ran through his veins in torrent, transforming pain into power, wound into healing, darkness into light. Palpatine widened his eyes, surprised to see that his attack was being absorbed, controlled and redirected by the young man. Impossible! No Jedi could do this! Screamed the Sith, intensifying the discharge. But it was already too late. Anakin had risen firmly, standing, sustaining the rays and returning them with the same intensity. The entire room vibrated with the impact, white flashes illuminating every corner. Palpatine tried to resist, but his own fury betrayed him. The power he launched was now his sentence. With a last cry of despair, the Chancellor's body was consumed by the energy he himself had conjured. A final flash exploded, and when it ceased, Palpatine lay on the ground, motionless, defeated. Silence took hold of the environment. Only the sound of Anakin's heavy breathing echoed, while he let his arms fall, exhausted but triumphant. When he left the place, Anakin did not have pride on his face, but serenity. He knew he had fulfilled his destiny, not through vanity or power, but through the choice to remain in the light. The Senate was soon informed, and the truth spread. The Chancellor was the Sith Lord who manipulated the Republic, defeated by the Chosen One himself. Dooku and Qui-Gon received the news with relief, understanding that the visions had finally been fulfilled, but in a different way. The cycle of destruction had been interrupted not by Anakin's fall, but by his victory over temptation. Shmi cried upon hearing that her son had liberated the galaxy from the shadow that threatened everything, and Padme knew that that act would change everyone's future. Anakin was no longer just the slave boy from Tatooine. He had become a symbol of hope, the Jedi who did not let himself be seduced by absolute power. And his victory proved that the Force was not made to subjugate, but to liberate. That was the true balance that the ancients had announced. Thus ended Palpatine's reign, destroyed not by betrayals or conspiracies, but by the inner strength of a young man who chose the path of light. The Chosen One had finally fulfilled his mission, and the galaxy, freed from darkness, was reborn with the promise of a different future.